How does a toy become the must-have, make-or-break toy of the season? For kids, it's about holiday magic. But if you look at the economic fundamentals behind that magic,
no toy company is going to manufacture the quantity of toys required if you have a fad. The thing that all these fads have in common was that demand way outstripped supply.
the harder it is to get something, the more we want it. That can be true in life and toys. Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Every toy in the toy store would love to become bigger than life. A cultural phenomenon like Tickle Me Elmo. But almost none are. Later in the show, we find out why certain toys catch lightning in a bottle. Also today, if you have an advent calendar, then you've already cracked a bunch of little boxes full of chocolate, mini perfumes, or some other consumer product. But how did Advent go from being this extra religious kind of thing to extra commercial? And speaking of gospel, if you believe in the free market, a truism is that government is no good at picking winners and losers. It should just leave the market alone. But governments around the world are now stepping in all over the place, even in laissez-faire loving America. So, whatever happened to capitalism? Back in 1980, the economist Milton Friedman hosted a show for PBS. Over 10 hours, he laid out the case for the free market. Lower taxes, less regulation. Yeah, public broadcasting, eh? Super sexy. At one point, Milton held up a yellow pencil and broke down how it got there.
The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron.
Thousands of people needed to come together to get that pencil into his hand. But there was no central planner or commissar telling everyone what to do. So what made it happen?
It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate.
Milton loves him some price signals. And not just because of cheap pencils.
That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
Peace, harmony, prosperity, all ours for the taking if we just trust in the power of the market. And a lot of people did. Milton's timing couldn't have been better. Ideas like privatization, individual responsibility, they took hold in the 80s. Thatcherism in the UK. In the US, Ronald Reagan put his cards on the table at his presidential inauguration.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
We've been living in that kind of get out of the way government world ever since. And the US carried the flag for that kind of free market capitalism. But now, America isn't waving that flag like it used to. Donald Trump's administration is buying ownership stakes in companies, like Intel, and a Canadian lithium miner. Also, it's letting NVIDIA sell some microchips to China, but it's taking a cut of the profits. The White House is sticking its beak into all kinds of places. In Hollywood, Trump is pushing a movie studio to make Rush Hour 4. America, The Pursuit of Life, Liberty, and Jackie Chan sequels. But if the US is no longer all cuddly with the free market, what does that mean for the rules of the game, the ones Canada followed for decades? Is that era of capitalism dead? Or is it just resting?
It is worth thinking about whether this is something new in American history or a particularly obvious and maybe a little bit outrageous movement in a new direction.
Lou Pauly is a political economist at the University of Toronto. When he looks at the lines between government and industry blurring in the U.S., he sees two different things at play. One, what the Trump administration is doing, and two, a shift towards more government intervention that was coming regardless of who was in charge. When America offshored its manufacturing to China, globalization created winners and losers. The U.S. Rust Belt got rustier. Tech billionaires in Silicon Valley got richer. Add in America becoming more uncomfortable with its dependence on China, and a reckoning was coming. What muddies the waters is the Trump part of things.
If it was any other administration, let me put it this way. If there hadn't been so much already evidence of self-dealing, people would be saying, look, the administration is trying to deal with a couple of problems that any other administration would be trying to deal with too.
Historically, Lou says America's relationship with the world has always been on a pendulum. It will throw open its doors to trade, then worry about relying too much on other countries. So the pendulum swings back, sometimes hard, like now with tariffs.
The idea that the U.S. state should intervene to buck up certain sectors is not particularly novel.
Where Trump's approach is different.
It is apparently being rolled out without an articulated strategy. Seems more or less random. Every day there's kind of new bits of news that seem surprising or not connected with anything in particular.
Trump is ad hoc. One day he's pushing Apple to make more iPhones in the U.S. The next, he's trying to strong-arm the EU into loosening its rules for tech companies. It can all feel a bit willy-nilly. But if you're searching for some coherence, his tactics have been described as neo-mercantilism. So, mercantilism, first of all. This is an old economic model, like hundreds of years old. Back when countries didn't cooperate, they looked out for number one. They used trade protectionism, like tariffs, to shelter domestic industries from competition, and mashed together economics with political goals, like threatening tariffs to get another country to tighten its borders. Now, whatever you want to call Trump's strategy, the U.S. government no longer seems to be hands off the wheel. It's more driving the economic bus. And now,
leaders around the world are thinking about what are the best ways to get through the current moment. Maybe the difficulties of the moment only last until the midterm elections in next year in the United States, but maybe they last another 2.5 years. How do we get through this?
If this is a permanent change, that's one thing. But if it's more temporary, countries don't want to blow up how they do everything. So what does the U.S. maybe shifting gears mean for Canada?
Look, every day we're reading the newspaper about what it means. It is an unprecedented challenge to deal with the problems that are coming out of the Trump administration at the moment.
Like it or not, Lou says Canada needs to react to the U.S. They're our neighbor. We're intertwined. So if Trump isn't playing by free market rules, if the game has changed, what moves do we need to make?
It's not the world of either libertarianism, libertarian free markets, or entirely regulated markets. It's in the pragmatic middle. It's about our social market economy, an acknowledgement that we have to make some pragmatic adjustments at the moment.
He says Ottawa could already be doing that. Look at the big fighter jet deal. It's dragging its feet on buying F-35s from an American company, Lockheed Martin, and considering instead a Swedish fighter jet, and negotiating with Sweden to make those planes here. Then there's the Fed's new Major Projects Office. It's trying to get more big stuff built in this country. This isn't exactly laissez-faire capitalism. But right now, Lou says,
there is no getting away from having to pragmatically adjust to developments in the United States as well as we can. And maybe the current surprising policy moves in the United States have given us an incentive to get back to a traditional Canadian approach, which is don't take the economy for granted. The government's got to be there to help, especially the national government has to be there to help steer it.
Milton Friedman and his yellow pencil might shudder at the idea of governments messing with the wondrous efficiency of the free market, of stepping in to pick winners and losers. And for 40 years, Ottawa has been more hands-off. But when Lou Pauly looks at where we're at, he thinks about something an old colleague used to say.
Every once in a while, when we're talking about topics like this, he would ask, why did the Canadian cross the road? The answer, to get to the middle.
Swinging to the middle doesn't mean rejecting the unfettered free market. But don't be surprised if capitalism here does get a tad more, fettered. Here's a little holiday factoid. Advent is from the Latin word adventus. It means arrival. Historically, waiting for that arrival is a time of deep spiritual reflection. Or you can spend it pounding little chocolates from your Advent calendar, maybe sampling 24 different hot sauces. Your puppy can get a biscuit calendar. So how did Advent go from being liturgical to so commercial?
Oh, that's really cute.
For Maya Warwick Brunell, the Christmas countdown has begun.
And every little door inside has a small jar of jam. So there's these tiny little jars that each probably would cover maybe a small piece of toast.
This Advent calendar is a gift from her mum, who moved away from Montreal a few years ago. Maya won't be able to spend Christmas with her, so it's a way for them to stay connected over their shared love of jam.
There's cherry with pink peppercorn. Oh, orange, yuzu, and grapefruit. That one was really tasty.
Maya has been getting Advent calendars since she was a kid, but she's never really thought about the meaning behind those 24 tiny doors.
Way back in the Roman Empire times, it developed as a way of preparing for the coming of Christ.
Matthew Anderson teaches religious studies at St. Francis Xavier University. In the church, Advent is the 4-week period leading up to Christmas. And Matthew says it's not all warm and fuzzy.
And the first 2 Sundays are anticipation of the coming of Christ at the end of time, the sort of judgment day. It's a really apocalyptic kind of a time. It's not at all kind of Christmassy.
The last 2 Sundays swing back to more familiar territory, messages of hope and acceptance.
It's a festival that, if people actually paid attention to it, is particularly suited for our weird and wonderful time right now in the world. And it also brings up, of course, a moral choice. How will I behave in this world? For most of us, it's who gets the biggest chocolate.
The first Advent calendars didn't have any sweet treats, just doors that opened to pictures of angels and baby Jesus. It was a way to get kids excited about the holiday. In 1971, Cadbury began pumping out its own chocolate Advent calendar. The rest is history.
And what we've seen now is it's become grossly commercialized.
Robert Warren is a marketing expert at the University of North Dakota. He says up until about 10 years ago, chocolate was the go-to Advent calendar. Now it's morphed into just about everything.
Nespresso released their Advent calendar, so let's open it.
Oh, it's vanilla. I love vanilla. Day 4 is a rollerball fragrance by Skylar.
There's even an ice cream Advent calendar, and one for crocheters, where you get a pattern every day to make a different character from the Peanuts comic.
I'm thinking that's just so ironic, given that Charles Schulz's Christmas special is trying to teach you about the real meaning of Christmas.
Robert says Advent calendars are just Christmas creep. Companies trying to capitalize as early as possible on holiday gift buying. That's why there's an Advent calendar for every budget. You can spend $10 on one at the grocery store, or a lot more. Like that time Tiffany's sold an advent calendar full of jewelry for more than $100,000. This year, each Canadian household is expected to spend about $1,000 on Christmas gifts. There's no official data on how much the advent calendar industry rakes in every year, but
based upon everything I've seen, we're talking well over $1 billion.
And it's not just parents buying them for their kids. Many advent calendars cater to young adults.
The millennials really want an experience. Keep in mind, they're now the biggest purchasing generation out there. So if you think about an advent calendar, it gives them an experience every day.
Even Matthew Anderson, the religious scholar, isn't all that bothered by the commercialization of Advent.
The Christian church has never been at its best when it's kind of shrilly demanding that things be, put the Christ back in Christmas.
He says people are going to celebrate the holidays however they want, and he doesn't think there's anything wrong with having something to look forward to. Even he's getting into it.
One of my favorites is the idea of a whiskey calendar. I'm hoping this year, who knows?
For the Cost of Living, I'm Leah Hendry.
So hey, do you have an advent calendar that you're cracking open right now? What is it? I mean, we know about chocolate, we know about whiskey, but do you have something that's maybe a little, weirder, off the beaten track? Give us a call and let us know what it is. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. We want to hear about your advent calendar. This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Havershrud. Every so often, a toy comes along that catches fire. A Cabbage Patch doll, Tamagotchi, Tickle Me Elmo. The toys that become so big, the news shows scenes of desperate parents lining up, getting in scraps, just trying to save the holidays. But why do some toys win the hearts and minds of kids and not 100 others? Chris Byrne is a toy historian and researcher. Yeah, that's a job. He spent more than 3 decades thinking about and playing with toys. Chris, hi.
Hi, it's so nice to be with you.
Thanks for being here. So Chris, the toys that become sensations, can you point to any one thing that maybe they share in common?
Yes, they have made the jump from the toy industry into the culture at large. They have become not just playthings, but cultural events.
And can you pick a toy, maybe give us an example of one of these that became a cultural event and break down why that one managed to make that leap?
Yeah, I can. Let's talk about Tickle Me Elmo. That was 1996. Tickle Me Elmo had started as a monkey that giggled. Tyco, who made it at the time, had the Sesame Street license, and they said, well, Elmo's super popular on Sesame Street. Let's put that mechanism in Elmo. And then the advertising people said, hey, we need a TV moment. It's got to vibrate. I was actually the first person to ever have Tickle Me Elmo on national television. It was at the Toy Fair in New York, and it was for the Today Show. And I just presented it as, this is a cool preschool toy. And that's what we thought it was going to be. What happened subsequently was that Rosie O'Donnell played with it, Brian Gumbel played with it, and it suddenly became a story in the media. And what happened with that is that Tyco thought, okay, this is going to be a good preschool toy with a favorite character. We're going to make X number of these. Well, once a fad hits and everybody wants it, then people are starting to scramble for it. And at the time, people from my high school called my parents and said, can Chris get us a Tickle Me Elmo? That's how crazy it was.
And could you hook them up?
I had one that I was traveling around the country with, showing on television. And I had the one. I had to open my bag in New Orleans, and a guy offered me $500 cash right there for it. So it captures the cultural imagination. And it's a way that people brand or mark themselves at a specific point in time and say, I was there then. It was like, where were you with the moon landing? Where were you when Kennedy was shot? It's that level of cultural event that the toy represents.
So did a toy ever go bonkers and you kind of didn't see it coming?
Oh, absolutely. Every time. Every time. You cannot predict a fad. You can't predict a fad. The closest to ever predicting a fad that I ever saw was Tiger Electronics with Furby. They were actually pushing themselves into it and doing everything that they could to get into the cultural imagination, and they managed to do it. But at the same time, there's that tipping point where suddenly everybody wants it that you cannot predict when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen.
So you mentioned, toy companies wanting to try to make this happen. I imagine that would be in the back of their mind the goal for all kinds of toys. Are there marketing tactics these companies use to try to make something become a phenomenon, or are they resigned to the fact that, hey, maybe it's just lightning striking, it's luck, and what are we going to do?
I think it's more lightning striking and what are we going to do? Because no toy company is going to manufacture the quantity of toys required if you have a fad. The thing that all these fads have in common was that demand way outstripped supply. If you make a Tickle Me Elmo or Cabbage Patch to your orders from your retailers, which makes sense, and maybe 10, 20% more in case something gets successful, you're not going to make a million of them. So when a fad happens, it's time to scramble, and people are air freighting things in from Asia, and then it's usually year 2 when you see the big sales because of the momentum created by the fad.
So they kind of stumble into scarcity, and scarcity is just such a powerful force. All of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, now everybody wants our thing.
Right. I've got it. You don't. Yeah.
What a marketing tactic. Marketing geniuses. Well, what about you? Did you have a favorite toy growing up, or when you were coming up, was there a toy that was like the it toy?
There wasn't. I loved Matchbox cars, but about when I was a kid, probably one of the two of the biggest ones that came out were Major Matt Mason, which is now kind of forgotten, except Mattel's trying to do a movie, who was a space guy. He came out right after the moon landing and had a whole story about him. And then the Evel Knievel stunt cycle from 1970, which was a huge hit. And then, of course, you fast forward later to the famous story with Star Wars, when they didn't have enough product for the holiday season and no one anticipated that was going to be a big hit. So they sold empty boxes as promissory notes. So that was, I believe, Bernie Loomis at Kenner came up with that idea. And people were going, it's not going to work. It worked.
Because people just wanted it, even if it was a promissory note. They just wanted to have a claim on this thing, to be part of, as you say, the thing.
Exactly.
So if you look at toys that maybe aren't phenomenon right now, but are certainly hot toys, is there a difference in what appeals to kids today versus what was appealing in, say, the 1980s?
Yes and no. The basic toys, basic play patterns, whether it's an Etch-a-Sketch or a Slinky or even a Cabbage Patch doll or a Barbie, those appeals still stay about the same. But when you look at things like games, there's a lot more edginess. There's a lot more irony. There's a lot more comedy. Today, with things like Exploding Kittens, you're actually looking at how I can double deal you, how I can make you, put you in the doghouse or whatever, how I can compete with you. Kids are a little bit more sophisticated in those areas than they were.
So for toys that do become cultural events, like Tickle Me Elmo, well, that came out in the 90s. If we look more recently, has there been a must-have toy like that? Something that's become bigger than life?
We have and we haven't. For example, Squishmallows. Squishmallows and now Jellycat, collectible plush. These are things that become trendy, but they don't become cultural phenomena. They are very popular with their niche market, but if you're not in that market, it's not like you're going to know it, right? You're not going to necessarily know it. And the reason is eBay and the secondary market. So you don't have to stand in line at 4 a.m. in the snow outside Toys R Us, Shanghai the delivery guy, and grab your toy off the back of the truck so you can get it. You can go on eBay in your pajamas and pay whatever you want to pay for it. So that scarcity, that impossibility of getting things doesn't really exist anymore. And that was part of what drove the frenzies.
Yeah, the frenzies, like what happened with Cabbage Patch dolls in the 80s.
We knew people who flew to London to get Cabbage Patch dolls because they weren't as popular there yet as they were here.
Could you see something like that happening now?
it was a different time, and it was kind of that Wall Street greed is good. What you have defines who you are in many aspects culturally. That's not really so much the case anymore. I think that the parents now are the ones who grew up in all of that, and they're going, that's not really what I want to teach my children.
Well, on that, do the toys we play with as kids, do you think they tell us anything about how we'll be as adults or I'm not saying they're going to shape us so much, but do they reflect anything about what we're interested in?
Absolutely. For me, I loved my Matchbox cars, and I love especially the models of yesteryear. I'm fascinated by history. I love sorting and categorizing. I was doing that when I was 7 years old, but I was doing it through play.
I like Trivial Pursuit. I mean, would that suggest that I like knowing stuff?
Yeah, it would suggest you like knowing stuff and you like information and you're curious about the world, and that, you like information. And especially for kids, information is a kind of currency. What do I know? They love to show off what they know.
So if you think about the hotter toys right now that kids are gravitating to, what do you think that might suggest about them when they grow up and they become adults?
Well, I look at the one of the big trends right now is what we're calling art plush, which is small collectible plush. And I think that this is a time of great upheaval and anxiety, particularly in the US, about whatever the political situation is and the financial situation. So gravitating towards things that are super cute, that are fun, that are cuddly. And that, I think, is something that these kids are gravitating towards for the warmth and the nurturing and the fun. And interestingly enough, this is exactly what happened after the OPEC oil crisis and the hostage situation in the late 70s under Carter, when we ushered in the era of cuteness with Holly Hobbie and Strawberry Shortcake and some of those other characters as well. So it's history repeating itself pretty much 40 years later.
Well, Chris, that was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It was great to play with you guys.
Chris Byrne is a toy historian and researcher. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Leah Hendry, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. Oh, and if you have anything on your mind, a question about business or the economy, please write us, let us know, give us a call. Every now and then we do a Q&A show and we try to answer your questions. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. Or send us an email, costofliving@cbc.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You ask great questions. We love digging into them, so looking forward to getting some more. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Thanks for listening.